In this video, we're going to be talking about the WatchKit interface picker, which is an object that allows us to see a scrolling list of items that the user can choose from. These can be text, images, or a combination of the two. And the user interacts with it basically by tapping it to bring it into focus, and then you use the digital crown to kind of scroll through the items. And then you tap again to select an item. So you basically use the digital crown, which is the knob on the watch, to scroll through, and then you can do different things depending on what you want to do with the picker object. And if you've used iOS before, you've probably seen a picker type object before. WatchKit interface does things a little bit differently because of the very tiny screen size. We can also have multiple pickers on screen at once, in which case we can just shift focus whenever we need to. So first of all, let's go ahead and let's grab a picker and let's take a look at what it looks like. Now we should realize that picker is a little bit more complex than say a label or even a timer, and there's a lot of things we need to do programmatically. So just be aware of that. And as you can see here, I'm just in my objects library. Picker, it's as we see here, it's a control for selecting an item from a list. So if you grab it, drag it in, right? So here it just looks like kind of an empty object with nothing inside of it. You see there's not too many options to choose from over here in the attributes inspector. So the first thing to go over here really is we're going to need to figure out items to put into this picker. And as you can see, we can't really do that in the attributes inspector, so we're going to need to do that programmatically. Now, as for actually doing that, it's not too difficult, but we do need to know how to do it. Before we get to that, though, let's explore some of the options we do have. So first of all, style. Now, there's basically three different style options. The first one is list, and this is the one we're going to use at first. And this will show us basically a vertically stacked list of items. Each item will have a title. We can also, if we want, have an optional accessory image associated with it that'll show up kind of in the background behind the title. And this is kind of our traditional scroller that we've seen for many years now in iOS. And in fact, if I kind of zoom in a little bit down here, in the preview image, this is what it's basically going to look like. So it's a scrollable list of items that are visible, and you can kind of scroll up and down using the digital crown. The other option here is stack, and stack will display the items as a stack of cards. And as you scroll through, the cards will animate from the bottom of the picker. Each item will display an image, and again, turning the crown will animate to a new card. The final one is sequence, which is really similar to stack, except it doesn't animate. So stack will animate as you go through, whereas sequence will just immediately pull up the next available option in the picker. So at first, though, we're just going to explore a list. Other things to talk about are focus style and indicator. So focus style, you can see it defaults to none. The other options are outline and outline with caption. And what these do is basically let the user know when the picker has focus. So, if we have multiple pickers on screen, user will have to tap whichever one they want to use and then use the digital crown to scroll through. So it's going to default to none. We can do an outline, and we can also do an outline with caption, of course. So you can choose outline. You can also set a caption if you want there to be a caption when it's focused. And then indicator, we can kind of use that in conjunction. So for example, indicator can be a value indicating whether the picker is conveying context with the number of picker items and also kind of which item is selected. So it sounds kind of more complex than it really is. We'll be exploring this in a little bit as well. For now, we'll just do focus style none and indicator disabled. And this enabled, this is what we normally see for pretty much every other object in the object library. This will show this as disabled until we enable it. So we're just going to put default enabled for now. Otherwise, we have our kind of standard alpha, so we can make it transparent if we want to. We can also adjust the alignment, but I'm not going to really mess with those right now. For now, we're just going to do a really simple picker with a couple options just to figure out how to do it initially. So first of all, let's go to our code. I'm going to shrink this inspector. I'm going to go to our assistant editor over here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the picker here, control click, bring it over into our WatchKit interface controller, make it an outlet, and I'm just going to call it my picker here. Okay, and we can see using the interface builder, it created this variable, my picker. Pretty standard procedure by now. So now we're going to need to figure out how to get things into the picker so that it displays what we want it to display. So what we're going to want to do is in our func awake, where we configure our interface objects, we'll basically define a couple variables, put them into an array, and then we will tell the picker to display that array. So first of all, we'll create a constant here, let item1, and we will say this is going to be a WK picker item. Right, you can see it kind of auto-completed for us there. And if I zoom in down below, well, it doesn't really fill the screen, but basically it says WK picker item object encapsulates info about a single item in a picker interface. You create picker items yourself and assign them to a WK interface picker object in your interface. For each item, you can specify a title string, image, or both based on the style of the picker. Okay, so that's convenient that it has that autocomplete for us. So we do it like so, WK picker item. So that's item 1. And then, because it's a WK picker item, right, we have a couple methods available to us. So if we kind of do item 1 dot, we can see based on the autocomplete the options available to us. So what we want to do is we want to set the title. Right, so item 1 dot title equals, and it takes a string. So we'll just call this one item 1 for now. Nothing too complex. Okay, item 1 dot title, and that's all we need to do for now. Do a couple more items as well. Let item 2 equals WK picker item. Item 2 dot title equals, you guessed it, item 2. Okay, and we'll do, let's see, we'll do 2 more actually. WK picker item. And is this the most efficient way to get your items figured out? Well, no, but it's going to work for our purpose here. All right, and finally, item 4 equals WK picker item. Item 4 dot title, whoops, dot title is what we want, equals item 4. Okay, so we have our items here. Now let's just put them into an array. So we'll say let items array equal, and we'll just say item 1, item 2, item 3, and item 4. So we need to put it in an array because that's what our WK interface picker is going to be looking for later. So now that we have the items in array, we can actually say my picker, so that's our variable, my picker dot. And let's kind of take a look at what we want to do. Right, so there's a whole bunch of options, but I actually saw it already. So we want to do this, set items. You can see that items, it takes in an array like so, array of WK picker items. So we'll set items, and we happen to have an array handy for us, items array. Right, and we can see that it has the style of WK picker item. So it's going to accept it, and this will allow us to actually see the items. So let's go ahead and launch this in the simulator. In the meantime, let's just kind of refresh ourselves on what it's going to be doing. So we're basically creating 4 items, giving them each a title. We don't, of course, have any action associated with them, but we do define them as WK picker items. And there we go. So we can see that we have our items. So basically I'm scrolling using my touchpad, but you can kind of simulate it using a scroll wheel as well if you're using a mouse. And this is us simulating using the digital crown basically. So we have our items, you know, we can click on them, we can scroll through. It doesn't really do anything right now, but that's how you get some basic items to display. Now that's really simple, but what if we want to actually do something when an item is selected? So for example, if we want to, I don't know, change the caption maybe. Well, first of all, we're going to need to associate the picker with an actual action. So let's just do that and let's see what that looks like. And I'm just going to put that down below will activate. Okay, seems like a logical place to me to put it. So I'm going to control click, drag it over, and just make sure I specify it's an action. So let's call this one picker did change, for example. And you can see it takes in a value that's an integer. So what is that? One way to learn that is we can actually just print it out to console. So let's print out what the value is. Okay, and this way we'll be able to tell which item is currently selected through the picker. And value, we will see that it's just going to show us an integer. So what's the integer? Well, as we'll see in a second, it's basically the index of the item. So right now we have item 1 selected. If I scroll down, so 1, 2, 3, And then if I scroll up again, so now I'm on item 2. Why is it not item 3? Well, it's because it's 0 based indexing. So item 1 is actually at index 0. Item 2, item 3, and it doesn't like that picker settle is not implemented, so it keeps popping that up. But at the very least, we do see that it's showing us the index, right? And that gives us a hint on how we can actually implement further behavior. But for now, we have a simple picker. We're having it display items, and that's pretty neat. Play around with some other settings. So if we want the picker to start at a certain index, for example, we can actually just declare that my picker dot set selected item index, and then it takes in the index. So keeping in mind that is 0 based index, so index 0 would be item 1. Let's say we wanted to start with item 2, and that would be index 1. Right, so this will default now to item 2 instead of, as it was doing, item 1. Let's also see what happens now. If we go into our attributes inspector and we say focus style outline. Okay, so we're putting focus style outline and we are setting the selected item based on the index. And let's just see what that looks like. Okay, so it's compiling. Wait for our simulator to load up. And I'll get rid of this in the meantime. Okay, there it goes. Alright, so now we can see that it is focused. It's the only thing on the interface, so it kind of defaults to being focused. And we can see that it started off at item 2. Right, so that's going to be convenient based on whatever you want to use your picker for. And down here, we're still just printing out the index. Right, so that's pretty neat. What else can we do? Well, let's try something else. So let's grab our picker here. Let's try focus outline with caption. So let's put a caption here for item 3 dot caption. Right, and it takes a string. Item 3 selected. Okay, let's try that out. Let's see what that does. Okay, and as I always say, we're always going to be kind of building incrementally. So making a small change, running it in the simulator, seeing what it does, and then basing our next action off of that. Alright, so there it is. Now we scroll to item 3, and hey, there we go. So we can see that item 3 is selected, is now the caption. We scroll away, it goes away. Right, so that would be pretty handy if obviously you want to identify to the user what item they have selected. And I'm going to leave that on for now. So that's pretty handy. And I'll do that for each of these. So I'm just going to say item 1 dot caption equals item 1 selected. Okay, and we'll do the same for the other 2 as well. Item 2 selected. Finally, caption here equals item 4 selected. Alrighty, and this should say item 4 dot caption. Let's add in another picker here so that we can kind of explore this behavior when it comes to being focused versus unfocused. So I'm going to go in here, grab another picker, and just drag it over like so. Okay, so now we have 2 pickers, and I'm just going to have one on top of the other. I could put them next to each other. In fact, maybe I will do that afterwards, but for now, I'm just going to do it separately. This one, let's just grab this one and set it to a variable. Let's see, my second picker. Alrighty, so now we have those outlets together. My second picker. And so, you know what, I'm just going to set it to have the same content. Just for now anyway. Let's set items array. Okay, and my second picker, let's go into our attributes inspector. Let's give it focus style of outline here. And let's run this and see what it looks like. Okay, so now it should be more clear whenever one is focused versus another because we have multiple pickers on the screen. So let's wait for this to load up, and then we'll take a look. There it goes. Okay, so now this picker is focused. Now this one is focused. Right, so it kind of keeps the outline, but it just shifts whichever one is focused. Right, so that's going to be convenient for us. And if I kind of click away, click back, yeah, so it has the behavior we want. Now what happens if we were to enable the indicator? Well, let's find out. So put it in on this one and also this one. So shown while focused. It should show us some kind of indicator. Okay, rerun the simulator. There it is. And so now we can see, basically it just adds kind of a little scroll indicator to show where you are. Right? Not exactly super useful, but I can see how it could be useful in some circumstances. But it just kind of shows you whichever indicator you're in, it shows you where you are in terms of the progress. If we had, 50 items, that might be helpful, but because we only have 4 items, I don't really think it's going to be necessary to show the indicator for the most part. So I'm just going to disable it on both. Now let's simplify this a bit and put them next to each other so we don't have to scroll down too much to access the respective picker. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put them both into a group. So first of all, I'm going to shrink this one down and this one as well. Okay, to be about the same. I'm just going to eyeball it. Whoops, not a picker. I'm going to bring in a group, which will allow me to put things next to each other. So there's our group. You can see we can adjust the layout. So I'm going to put one picker on the left and another picker to the right of that one. It just kind of shows the advantage of groups. And I'm going to squish this even more so that it fits in. Let's say with, let's see, relative to container. And we'll shrink it like so. And maybe a little more. What if we say size fit content? No, that's way too big. Okay, relative to container. Like so. Do some fine adjustment there. Okay, so not going to be exactly even, but at least it's going to show us the two of them side by side. Well, that's loading up. Let's go back to our code here and get rid of that. Okay, and so we have the basics already of pickers. Now all that's left is to kind of explore the different kinds of pickers, right? So now they're next to each other. Kind of convenient now. So you can imagine how this would be convenient, right? So on the left could be like a day, on the right could be a month, for example, if you're wanting to do some kind of indicator like that. It depends what you want. You do have to be careful though in terms of the screen real estate. Keeping in mind it is for a watch, right? It's a pretty small screen, so you do have to make efficient use of your space. Next, let's figure out how we can actually do something. So based on the index, we have a function here for this indicator, or this picker rather. Let's, just in case we need one, let's do another action for the one on the right. So bring it in here, and picker 2 did change. And actually, I'm going to make sure it's an action. Okay, connect that. So now we have this available to us when we need it. So what kind of thing can we do with this? Well, just for a really simple example, let's just kind of manipulate a label object down below to say something based on whatever item is selected in the picker. So how can we do that? Well, pretty straightforward. And you can probably imagine how we can do this pretty easily as well. But I'm just going to bring in a label object, put it right there. Let me center it. Okay. And let's see, label. I'm going to grab it and connect it to our code. And let's just call this my label. Yeah, my label. Okay, and I'll just fix the spacing here. So let's say we grab the my label dot set text, and the text can be something like, first of all, let's put in a variable here, var item equals, we'll say value plus 1 because it is 0 based indexed. Okay, var item equals value plus 1. Set text item is the coolest. All right, and actually, yeah, we can use a constant here. I think that would be fine. And so now let's see what it does. Let's see if it works. Right, so of course, probably the most basic example we can do, but at least it's going to show us what's happening here. Okay, so that should be ready here shortly. Item 2 is the coolest. What about item 3? Item 3 is also the coolest. Right, over here, it doesn't do anything because we don't have any functions or behavior attached to it. But over here, we're manipulating another object. Right? The most simple example, but if it works, it works.